everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're going to be ranking the top 10 free agents of this year's free agency. We're also going to be talking about the top three landing spots for each one of those free agents, our kind of NFL Seekers projected average per year value for the contracts that each of these guys are going to make. So, we're going to talk about some stars. It'll be interesting to see if any of these teams actually let them leave. I feel like a lot of them could totally come back to their respective teams, but really excited for this one. How are you?
Yeah, no, I love free agency, man, and it's one of the most exciting days, period. I mean, I think it's probably the day where people are glued to their phone the most, just refreshing X and it's just a spam refresh. What's happening? Who's getting signed? It's a fantastic day. Free agency frenzy. It's just right around the corner. So, we thought we'd tease you guys with, some fun landing spots for these guys and teams that could possibly afford them and would make sense for these top players.
Yeah, free agency's right around the corner. We're going to get a lot of free agent content out, predicting the quarterback carousel, predicting where even more of these guys end up. So really excited. Do you want to just get into it? Our top 10, we're going to start out with one. We're going to start out with the star.
Yes, sir. Let's not keep the people waiting. Let's get right into it.
All right, let's not keep the people waiting. We'll go on to our number one free agent. It's going to be Chris Jones for the Chiefs, the Super Bowl champion. Back to back. He's just an absolute stud. He is off another incredible season, graded 88.1 in PFF, the fifth highest interior D lineman. Last year, he was the first highest at 92.3. He's incredibly consistent. He was the fifth highest the year before. Just a dominant defensive interior that really he kind of transcends. He's kind of more valuable than most number one edge rushers because he's just such a good pass rusher on that interior, and a lot of teams could benefit from him. It's kind of interesting. Last year there was a whole debacle with Chris Jones' situation, and it ended up going into the season week one against the Lions. He was sitting up there with his agent holding out, and they ended up ultimately getting a deal done. They feels like they kind of lowballed him. I don't know what's going to happen this year. They had the parade, and he said that he's coming back, but he was definitely a little bit tipsy in that video or whatever, and his agent was kind of saying no more drinking for Chris. So it's going to be interesting to see if he actually does stay in Kansas City. Obviously, the vibes are feeling that way because of what he said. No one's really rumored to really throw a lot of money at him. So I don't know. What do you think ultimately happens with Chris?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, yeah, Chris Jones is kind of just that elite level interior player. He's now considered like I honestly think this year he kind of overtook, I would say, Aaron Donald for the throne of the best interior defensive lineman. And he's just, when it comes to pass rushing, run stopping, just the all around football player, Chris Jones is just doing it at an elite level. It's incredible to watch. But yeah, no, that Kansas City parade, man, was a weird parade with a lot of things that ended up happening that day. But yeah, Chris Jones up on the stage, super drunk, screaming, "We're running it back! I'm coming back!" Three-peat. His agent is punching holes through the wall with that because he probably just lost a lot of leverage on that because now they know Chris Jones wants to be back. So, I mean, ultimately, I see Chris Jones. I could see him coming back. I think they will take care of him. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to start taking that Tom Brady approach, and he'll restructure his contract and do whatever it takes to keep these star players in line for the Chiefs, and they want that 3P. And so I ultimately do see Chris Jones coming back. They're gonna have to pay him. They're gonna have to pay up. They will have to pay $20+ million. We're projecting $29 million per year, which is fair. That's fair. A guy like Chris Jones deserves that. But should we talk about a couple other teams that we think would be good fits if Kansas City can't pay up?
Yeah, so speaking of the money, PFF projects him at a 4 year, $30 million per year contract, and we kind of did our own calculations. We think he deserves where he will ultimately end up at the $29 million per year contract. It seems like the Chiefs kind of lowballed him last year. It seems like they kind of got away with getting him on somewhat of a discount. So I do think they go under 30 million, but right there in the sweet spot. And yeah, talk about your favorite fits if he somehow walks.
Yeah, so with my favorite fits, we got to take into consideration teams with cap space, teams with win now type of capability. And so, doing my research on it, a team that is in dire need of defensive interior help, that made the playoffs, won a playoff game, and is one of the top 10 teams in cap space. The Houston Texans, with a defensive minded head coach like DeMeco Ryans, I think Chris Jones, you add him into that, Texans defensive line with Jonathan Grenard, Will Anderson Jr., and you have Chris Jones just sitting there in the middle. That would be a lethal presence. I mean, the Texans are looking to really take over the South this year, the AFC South. And I think he would slide right into that D'Amico Ryan's defense and be one of the top defensive linemen in the league. And they have the money to pay him. So that was probably my most favorite fit.
I love that one. And then the Detroit Lions as well, just another team that has the ability to throw money at someone like this, and another team that feels like they have a lot of hype around them, and they're almost like one piece away. And this piece could really move them over that top and move them into that Super Bowl like winner conversation. So this would be a huge acquisition for anyone, in that position trying to make it. It is hard because there aren't a lot of teams that can really throw a bag at like the best player in free agency, and it's a hard conversation. A lot of times these guys are locked up before free agency even starts. So will be interesting, but I think we both are feeling the vibes that he somehow the Chiefs somehow retain him somehow.
Yeah, Chiefs will get some friendly deal done, I ultimately think. But I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise though. I mean, the Lions have $57 million in cap spending space, and the Texans have $67 million. So I mean, these teams could really consider throwing a bag at Chris Jones. And I mean, he held out into last season wanting to get that bag. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I think he does want to go back to the Chiefs. I think that is his first and foremost place where he wants to play, and he wants to end his career as a Chief. But if they can't get a deal done, and I really think Chris Jones will hit free agency. I don't think they will have him locked up or franchise tag him by any means before the start of free agency. So I could see some negotiating going on for a while, but those would really be two fun teams. I'd love to see him playing under D'Amico Ryans. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, he's a winner. He's going to go somewhere where he thinks he can win 100%. But with that, let's get on to our NFL Seekers number two free agent, and it is going to be Josh Allen from the Jaguars, coming off an incredible season. A lot of people are expecting him to be franchise tagged because you can't really let this guy walk. He's coming off 19 sacks, 90 pressures, and a 20.5 pass rush win rate. That was the best in the NFL. So absolute monster. You kind of have to pay this guy a bag because his production last year really warrants that. So really interested to see where he ultimately ends up. There are definitely a lot of fits, a lot of teams that would, want them in their defense. The big question here is ultimately if the Jaguars would let him walk. I feel like the worst case scenario would be like a tag and trade, because I don't know if you can really let this guy out of your building for nothing, not getting anything out of it. So we have him at a projected 24.5 million average per year. I think he's going to get like a 1 year contract just because of that franchise tag. But yeah, it's a lot of money. He definitely deserves it, and I think he's going to be a very good player for whoever gets him.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, Josh Allen, I mean, what a hell of a season coming up on a year where your contract is expiring. So he played exactly how he wanted to. And yeah, he earned himself a big bag. And it is going to be interesting because I mean, oh yeah, first and foremost, it would be kind of wild to see the Jaguars let this guy walk. Um, that would just be reckless. It would be crazy of the Jaguars to do that. But they do, I mean, they're not hurting in cap space. I mean, they're $25 million under the cap. Um, if they sign Josh Allen, that's going to take most of it. So you won't have much to do outside of that. But then, yeah, they definitely do have some decisions to make with, free agents, wide receiver Calvin Ridley and what they end up doing with that. And I mean, if they did ultimately end up letting Josh Allen walk, they would get a pretty, good comp pick in return. I mean, I don't know if they wanted to tag him and try and trade him, because you could probably get a first round pick for Josh Allen. I think no doubt, to a team that's really desperate. Um, but yeah, I'll just get into my fits real quick. First and foremost, the Washington Commanders. This is a team number one. This is a team that can throw it back. They just let Montez Sweat and Chase Young go. They don't have anyone rushing. They don't have any edge rushers. The fans are screaming, "What are we going to be, the edge rushers?" And you have $80 million in cap space. You got a new owner, a new GM. They're going to want to bring excitement. They're going to want to bring fans to the stadium. And signing, the number one edge rusher would do that. So, I mean, the Commanders would be a sneaky, sneaky fit for Josh Allen. I think he would actually thrive with the Bama brothers in the middle. But yeah, a team that has tons of money that could honestly throw, I mean, They could offer him quite a bit above what I think the Jaguars could. They could throw $30 million at Josh Allen, and that might tempt him away if they can't get a deal done. Or I mean, obviously the Jaguars have the opportunity to franchise tag him, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I ultimately don't think that they will let him walk, but the Commanders would be a sneaky, sneaky good team for him.
Yeah, the Commanders, who are a team that don't have any edge rushers, definitely do have the ability to throw, all the money that they can allocate into edge rusher, into this one player and really throw the bag at him. And yeah, we do respect the Washington Redskins over here. So we got the Redskins logo, the proper OG Washington logo, because that is the best Washington uniform and logo, and no one will ever convince anyone otherwise because everyone loved it. But another great fit would be the Lions, kind of going back with the Chris Jones thinking. I mean, the Lions are incredibly hyped up. You're coming off a great season, one game away from the Super Bowl, and you feel like you're kind of one piece away. You really do, especially on that defensive side. So, getting a guy like Josh Allen opposite of Aiden Hutchinson would just be a freaky thing, and it'd be scary. Another fit could be like the Bears, similar to the Commanders, just a team with a lot of money that can really throw it at him, and him opposite of Montez Sweat would be pretty scary. So, yeah, Josh Allen, it's going to be exciting wherever he goes. I think we both ultimately predict he ends up at the Jaguars as well because they're most likely going to franchise tag him like T. Higgins.
Yeah, he's ultimately going to hit that franchise tag. Oh, yeah. I mean, it would just be crazy. You can't let a premier pass rusher in the NFL, in his prime walk. It's just crazy. But yeah, the Lions would be. You pair Josh Allen opposite Aiden Hutchinson, and you really are. You really that's why the Lions they're a fit for a lot of teams because they'll probably. I mean, they have the money. They are an immediate Super Bowl contender right now, and they have $57 million in cap space. I know that they're eventually going to have to get a deal done with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they'll figure something out with Jared Goff. But yeah, I mean, right now could be your all-in year for the Lions. So you probably need to get one of these top 10 free agents, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and we said how productive Josh Allen was already, but 90 PFF grade, only 26 years old. He really will be a high tier signing that honestly has a lot of upside to improve wherever he goes and have an even better, more dominant like defensive player of the year season eventually. He's that type of player. And speaking of that type of player, let's just get on to our number three, someone we're kind of going back and forth, really close to being our number two player, Brian Burns, who's a similar player to Josh Allen, an incredible edge rusher. He's only 25 years old. Ultimately, we had him just one spot behind Josh because of Josh was just too productive last year. He had too crazy of a season with that 90 PFF grade, but don't call Brian Burns a slouch. He's been absolutely dominant. He's a freaky, bendy, a great mover on the edge, a speedy guy compared to Von Miller coming out, and you automatically saw it when he came out. And there were teams like the Rams. We'll get into our fits right now because the Rams have been kind of linked to him for like 2 years during the trade deadline. So it seems like the Rams would be a team to just throw a bag at him, get him on that Aaron Donald defensive line, and that's scary. But I feel like we had to put the Panthers on here too because I feel like he's going to be a huge priority for the Panthers to ultimately retain him with Evero. I think bringing back Evero gives you some momentum. That defense was playing better at the end of the year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities they returns, but Brian Burns will be interesting to see where he ends up because he has so much upside to like really, really improve wherever he goes and just blow up next year.
I love all the OG logos, Dan. It's hilarious. But yeah, Brian Burns, man, he is like you said, he just has that. He's kind of that stand up outside linebacker edge type of Von Miller, Khalil Mack type of player. And yeah, he's just so young, and there's just so much to be left to be desired with Brian Burns, and you can just see all that potential. And we have seen it. He's just a dominant player, obviously playing on an underwhelming defense with the Panthers, just a kind of a disaster of an organization. If I was Brian Burns, I'd really want out of Carolina. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think Carolina would be dumb to let Brian Burns go. I would smack that franchise tag as quick as I could on Brian Burns. But yeah, I mean, obviously his production, he only had 8 sacks this year, couple forced fumbles, but not as good as Josh Allen. But I wouldn't even say, sacks are a misleading stat.
Very.
They're definitely a misleading stat. I mean, if he would have had 17, I probably would have put him, just because you can't. I mean, Josh Allen's production was really just insane, but they are a misleading stat. I think Brian Burns is every bit as good as Josh Allen. It was just hard to flip flop back and forth. But yeah, to get onto the team fits, obviously, first and foremost, Carolina. If Evero can keep him, that's what they should do. But going outside of that, yeah, the Los Angeles Rams would be a really fun team. It seems like they're just kind of you know, they're really close. They're just, they need that explosive, they need that dominant edge rusher. It seems like they're just kind of lacking that on the edge. And it seems like they kind of have been for a while. But they're a team with gosh, let me get their cap space pulled up. Oh yeah, they have $43 million in cap space. They got a lot of young players. Obviously, most of their money's going to big guys like Aaron Donald and Matthew Stafford. But yeah, and they have room to play around with, and Brian Burns would be an incredible fit. Another team would be the Atlanta Falcons. Another team desperate for some edge help. They just got Zach Robinson. As their head coach. So a defensive minded head coach. I could see Zach Robinson wanting to go out there and throw a bag, make a splash in free agency. They definitely have the cap space to do it. They're $33 million under the cap. So some fun options for Brian Burns. I really would like to see him leave Carolina. And I think there is a possibility that he does.
Yeah, the Falcons got Raheem Morris as their head coach, but he is a perfect Raheem
Oh,
Morris guy.
that,
And
flip flop coaches, excuse me, in my head.
it
Yeah,
kind of goes back to the Rams too, because the Rams have been so interested in this guy, and he's now with the Falcons, and I didn't even think about that. But yeah, the Falcons definitely could be the same amount of interested in Brian. I think you could throw out like the Commanders as well. Same thinking as Josh Allen. They need an edge bad. I think you thought the Patriots would be a good fit. Seems like a
yeah.
Patriot player. They got a lot of money to play around with. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for Brian if he does leave as well.
Yeah, if the Patriots would be Gerard Mayo, another young, defensive minded head coach coming into the realm. But yeah, there's a handful. You pick any team in the NFL would want this guy, especially at his age. He's going to be one of the better free agent signings, and I think he's going to be one of the better edge rushers. For you could probably play the next 7-8 years, honestly, and at an elite level.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you're kind of buying him low, and you almost are positive that he's going to have a more productive season next year. You're buying him at a good price because he's going to blow up soon. So love that. Love having Brian at 3. And let's get on to our number 4 player, super polarizing one, Kirk Cousins here. Interesting to see where he ultimately will end up. I'm personally pretty confident in this one. I'm pretty confident he stays in Minnesota. I think the vibes towards the end of the season with him and his kid, banging the drum before week 18 with their shirts off, and not waiving his no trade clause before the deadline because he didn't want to move his family. The vibes are swaying towards him ultimately coming back, and the Vikings drafting a quarterback to develop behind him for a year. Probably going to be a 1-year deal with Kirk. We projected at a 38 a year. PFF has it at 35 a year. I guess we're a little bit higher on. I mean, Kirk had a great season last year. I think he was like on the MVP trajectory. The Vikings were on like a playoff lock trajectory if he didn't get hurt. They really were playing good football. So I don't blame the Vikings for really paying him and bringing him back for at least a 1-year deal, 2-year deal. Um, Interested to see where he ends up. What are you thinking happened with Kirk?
Yeah, I ultimately think Kirk needs. I would sign him to a 2-year deal and let him just play it out. I think he's got 2 good years left in him. Obviously, the Vikings would be crazy to let him go because they figured out they have an elite defense. They have Brian Flores, who's a great defensive coordinator, and then they have Kevin O'Connell, who's a great offensive coach, and they have weapons, and they have the 11th pick in the NFL draft, so they're picking early. They can really go get a difference maker. And so, yeah, I think you ultimately try and get Kirk, to a 2-year deal. I think you front load the contract and you add, some void years maybe after it. But it would be super fun. It'd be super fun to see Kirk run it back. I think that's ultimately what will happen. But if he doesn't, if they can't get a deal done, you got the Atlanta Falcons, a team desperate. They don't even have a quarterback on their roster. Right? You can't take Desmond Ritter serious anymore. You can't take Taylor Heineke serious anymore. That's a team that needs a quarterback, has a top 10 pick, but is a very underwhelming team because of the quarterback. They have a lot of really good pieces on their defense and offense. They have one of the more young, polarizing, exciting offensive weapons in Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who's just left so much to be desired. It'll be fun to see if he can really thrive under this new regime. And then you just drafted one of the better running backs in the NFL and Bijan Robinson. So you have pieces. It would be enticing for Kirk. I think that would be a good 1-year, 2-year place to play out his career. What do you think?
Yeah, Zach Robinson is definitely calling about Kirk already because I know for a fact Kirk's the number one quarterback on Zach Robinson's mind right now for the Falcons. I think his backup option would just be like a JJ McCarthy because he, can eventually turn into a Kirk type player. I really do think he's the absolute perfect fit for that Sean McVay offense over there for the Falcons. So I really do think it's down to two teams. It's either the Vikings, if he somehow miraculously leaves, it's going to be the Falcons. But we threw a third team in here because we did for every top 10 free agent. I threw in the Broncos because I don't think the Steelers or really like the Patriots have the craziness. Like I think Sean Payton's the only guy that's crazy enough to completely disregard the cap and somehow make this move in a crazy, crazy world. Sean Payton's the only guy that could come out of left field and make this silly move with their cap situation. So in a dart throw, we put the Broncos, but it's really down to the Vikings and Falcons and whatever team he chooses, it's going to be perfect. He fits both. Offense is perfect, and both have a lot of weapons that he's going to make produce. He's going to help them produce for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're right. The Broncos are crazy enough after the whole, Russell Wilson type thing. I mean, the Broncos are going to need a quarterback. Obviously, they are, $16 million over the cap right now, but their owner has no problem. He's not scared to go write a 70, $80 million check fully guaranteed to Kirk Cousins. They have no problem, figuring out to push the can down the road. I should say. They kind of seem like that Saints team right now. And that stems from Sean Payton. Obviously, they just a team that's not afraid to kick the can down the road and really go make a splash. Obviously, they did it last year in free agency. I think they spent the most free agency money ever last year. But yeah, that's definitely a team and a team that was linked to Kirk Cousins. Last time he was, in the free agency cycle.
So I really don't think there's any other team that would even, even try to obtain him. So with that, let's get on to our free agent number 5, a super interesting one. Justin Madubuike from the Ravens, absolute breakout season this year. Really just came on to the scene with an incredibly productive season, and we project him to get 21 million this year. It's hard. It's hard to because he really does have that 1 year of production, and it's also with Mike McDonald coaching him up, who clearly was one of the better defensive coaches in the NFL. Good transition into why we have the Seahawks as a fit, by the way. I think the Ravens and Seahawks scheme is just perfect for him. That's why he was so incredibly productive last year. So I ultimately see him, ending up in that same scheme, that hybrid scheme, either with the Ravens or he goes to Seattle with McDonald and continues dominating. They did sign Draymond Jones last year, so he might not have the means to do so, but would be exciting. But yeah, we project him at 21 million a year. It was hard to kind of project a certain amount because of that 1 year of production. But PFF has him at 23 million actually. So you really don't know. This guy's an absolute stud, and he could even have a better season next year, and it could be a bargain that price.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Justin Madubuike, really, yeah, it's a little scary because it was an elite 1 year sample size, but it was elite. It was an absolute elite performance. 13 sacks from the interior, 2 forced fumbles. I mean, he was one of the top 5, interior rushers in the NFL, and he did it with not great edge rushers, older guys in Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney. So it's not like he had a Will Anderson or an elite top tier Khalil Mack, rushing off the edge for him to give him those sacks. But again, these guys on their contract years is crazy. They seem to play the best on their contract years. And yeah, ultimately, the Ravens, he fits so perfectly into that scheme and system. But their defensive coordinator leaves, gets a head coaching job in Seattle. It would be very tempting to put him over there. Seattle and the Ravens are neck and neck in cap space. Seahawks coming in at 12 or 13 million. Ravens have 16 million cap space, but it's going to be interesting because it might be a bidding war between those two teams.
Yeah, and this stat right here, Justin had half a sack in 13 of 17 games last year. So that's a very large sample size of production and just being involved. And he really is a good pass rusher, a really good run defender as well, really just good all around defensive lineman coming out of Texas A&M. Great pick, another great pick for the Ravens. So going to be exciting to see where he lands. The Bears would be another one. The Bears really need any help on that pass rushing side, that defensive line. The Bears, the Commanders, a lot of teams could be throwing a bag at Justin because of that season he had. we ultimately have that projected average per year a little bit lower than like PFF and CBS just because of that 1 year production and the defensive interior, you know, could be priced down a little bit, but 21 million a year is definitely still a hefty price.
Yeah, it is a hefty price, but at the same time, it seems like a fair price for him. And I was just thinking, what are the Ravens known for? What is their franchise known for? Um, Drafting players, developing players, letting them walk, and collecting a ton of comp picks because they're very confident in how they can draft. And so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I really do think Justin Madubuike actually will not be a Raven. I think obviously that's his best fit. I think they'd be crazy to let him leave, but they are confident in their drafting. They have some of the best, front office in the NFL at drafting. They take these guys in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth round and are always getting steals. So don't be surprised if he's not a Raven. And yeah, the Bears would be an ultimately fun team that they have $78 million in cap space. They went out and made a splash move with Montez Sweat last season. You get Justin Madubuike in the middle. That is lethal, man. That's a fun fit.
Yeah, the Ravens, they draft so well. They got Travis Jones a few years ago. It feels like they can just, draft another great defensive interior to replace him. So definitely don't be surprised if he leaves. But with that, let's go on to our number 6 free agent, Christian Wilkins for the Dolphins, another interior defensive lineman. Kind of similar thinking with Madubuike. He's 28 years old, so a little bit older, but he does have a lot of years of sample size of really dominance. He has some years of dominance as a pass rusher, but he mostly thrives as just a great run defender. You could call him one of the best run defenders in the NFL every single year. Last year, he's coming off, his worst season as a pass rusher for sure. He's coming off his worst season, so he could, start out with a slow market. It might heat up as things go on, but yeah, he's a very interesting one. We don't have the Dolphins as a top fit for him because there's a lot of rumors that the Dolphins are just content with letting him walk or tagging and trading him. So don't be surprised if they franchise tag him and then send him to the highest bidder. But I think we're both actually expecting Christian to leave.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins cap space not looking pretty right now. They have a lot of holes in their roster with the offensive line. I mean, it's kind of tough, right? The Dolphins are kind of in a tricky situation right now. Obviously, they have kind of a disaster class going on with the quarterback position. I think they're gonna. Did they pick up Tua's fifth-year option? They obviously didn't sign him. They
Yeah.
have not extended him, but yeah. So Tua is going to be playing on his fifth-year option. You got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle that are probably like 35% of your cap space overall. Tyreek Hill alone. And then all of your, edge defenders just got hurt. Your Jalen Phillips, your Andrew Van Ginkel is probably going to end up walking. Bradley Chubb, who probably won't start off the season. So it's a tricky situation. The Dolphins, I'm not envious of their situation. $27 million over the cap. And yeah, it just seems like Christian Wilkins is just going to be cap casualty. It doesn't seem like they'll have the money or the resources to really throw at him. You know, we do project him to get at least $21 million annually per year. But yeah, and we'll just get into fits. I mean, Christian Wilkins did have 9 sacks last season from the interior rusher, which is elite. It's really good. And he is a dominant run defender. But a team, that could, you know, be competitive, be in this type of market. They're kind of projected. The Vikings, they're kind of projected to even be looking at a interior pass rusher, in the first round, in a Byron Murphy or a Jerzon Newton. But I think it'd be the smarter route for them, to use that resource in a different way, and to go take a chance on a Christian Wilkins. I mean, I think in a Brian Flores defensive scheme, he would be absolutely elite. He would fit right in there. He would be dominant. That's probably their biggest hole on defense. And then again, another fit that I'll just hurry and throw out here real quick, and I'll let you talk about them. The Colts. When Grover Stewart was out, Colts they could not stop the run. Their run defense was atrocious. And the Colts have a lot of money, and the Grover Stewart is a free agent. The Colts have a ton of money to play with. They could go upgrade that position. They could go get Christian Wilkins. He kind of seems like a Chris Ballard type of fit guy. Somebody who's a good NFL player, a clean dude who likes to yap and be a little barky. He's a funny guy. But yeah, I think the Colts would be almost a perfect fit for him. You pair him next to DeForest Buckner. That's a lethal interior right there.
Yeah, I like the Colts as a fit a lot. Even if, some people are saying Buckner could be a cap casualty, and then you just bring in Wilkins to be that plug in the middle. But either way, if you get him and Buckner, that's insane. He's definitely a definite upgrade to Grover Stewart, who is a free agent. So love that fit. I don't want to completely rule out the Dolphins. They did just release Emmanuel Ogba, who has a crazy contract, so that could, help free up some space for Wilkins to return. I don't want to completely rule it out because he's, a Dolphin legend at this point. He's really good for them. So don't want to rule that out. But the Rams as well. Imagine pairing him up with Aaron Donald and just having a completely dominant defensive line. They couldn't be blocked. They would both have like that over 10 sacks, and it would be a completely dominant duo. I couldn't even imagine that.
You wouldn't run up the middle. You wouldn't call anything up the middle. You would be allocating all your resources to be blocking in the middle. Yeah, that would be nuts. And none of this is out of the realm of possibilities. All these teams that we just mentioned all have enough cap space. They're sitting fine on cap space to sign a guy like Christian Wilkins. And you're going to be signing Christian Wilkins to a multi-year deal. I believe it's going to be a 3-4 year deal. And it wouldn't hurt any of these teams to sign him. And I keep going back. I'm sorry, to the Colts fit. I think the Colts would just be such a fit. And the Colts, they have $72 million in cap space to play with. I think they could give Christian Wilkins a 4-year, $21 million average per year type of contract, and you just pair him in that defense. It would just be awesome.
All right, Store's calling a shot to Wilkins to Indy. We'll come back and clip it when it happens. But anything else you want to say in this one?
No, let's move on to number 7.
All right, let's get on to the NFL Seekers. Number 7 for agents, someone we're definitely higher on than most, and that's Jaylon Johnson, the number 1 graded corner in the NFL last year with a 91 PFF grade. Just a dominant outside physical corner, smart corner. He baits quarterbacks all the time on a normal basis. He's just perfect. I would say he's definitely up there as, it's a volatile position, but I would say he's definitely up there as one of the high tier premier corners that you can count on every single year. And you can't really say that with a lot of the players at that position because it's such a hard position. So Jalen's going to be very valuable. We have him at 20 million a year. PFF has him at 19. We're a little bit higher on him because we think he's going to be worth it. We think someone's going to throw the bag at him to be their number 1 corner. And we saw it with the Bears last year. He completely changed that defense. It allows you to be very flexible with the rest of your DBs, having that number 1 corner you could put on an island. So he's going to get a bag. He's going to get around that 20 million for sure, no matter where it is. There are a lot of vibes stating that he's going to go back to Chicago. He even said as long as they treat him right and then give him his money, he's going to go back to Chicago and prioritize that return. He was a perfect fit for the Eberflus defense. So I like that either way. But yeah, we have him projected at 20, and I think that's the perfect sweet spot for how well he played last year. He was dominant.
Oh, dude, he is dominant. I mean, we're very familiar with Jaylon Johnson coming out of the University of Utah. A legend at the University of Utah, one of the better corners we've seen. But yeah, I
Still
mean,
the highest recruit in the school history, by the way.
yeah, wow. Yeah, you love to see. You love to see the Jalen, man. You love to see him thriving. We absolutely love Jaylon Johnson. He is 24 years old, man. I mean, he's the perfect age for a corner right now. I mean, when he's 24 years old, he is young. 4 interception season, just an absolute lockdown corner. A guy that can play press man. He can play zone. He can really thrive in any kind of defensive system. He's a true CB1, in the NFL, and there's really nothing more hard and more valuable than that to find. And so, yeah, Jaylon Johnson is going to get the bag. The Bears would be stupid to let him walk. I think by no means you let him hit free agency. You franchise tag him, you throw him the bag. The Bears are sitting really pretty at $78 million in cap space. This is just a small dent. You're going to be getting rid of Justin Fields. You're going to have that, that friendly 4-year quarterback contract with a 5th-year option with Caleb Williams coming up. So, you go out and spend big. And obviously you take care of your internal guys. You take care of one of your best defensive players. And yeah, so ultimately Chicago is the best fit. Chicago has the money. I would think they'd be crazy to let him go, but we got to throw out some options out there. And the San Francisco 49ers, a team that was just in the Super Bowl, could definitely use some corner help outside of Charvarius Ward. You line Jaylon Johnson up in that defense, man, he's going to be probably even better, more lethal with that pass rushing help of the 49ers, and that defensive scheme would just be ridiculous. So that would be an ultra fun fit for me. Let's see, the 49ers, they're still $5 million over the cap. They could make something work for a guy like Jaylon Johnson. Obviously, I think they will move off of a Brandon Ayuk or a Deebo Samuel this season and create some cap space. But you get a Jaylon Johnson, man. That's fun.
Yeah, I wanted to throw the Niners in here just for like the fact that if somehow the Bears can't secure him, I'm almost positive a contender like the Niners, a high tier team, the Niners, Lions, Cardinals, or I just said Cardinals, Chiefs or Lions, not the Cardinals. One of those four contender teams that everyone expects to be there at the end of the year every year. I really do think one of them will ultimately end up with him. I think they're gonna. I mean, he was a popular player at this trade deadline, by the way. I know for a fact the Chiefs were really calling on Jalen, the Lions, the Bills, the 49ers. I think any of these really good teams, I think they're, a solid number one corner away. It can be a very game-changing thing if they can acquire him. So if the Bears somehow let him walk, he's going to be dominant for someone. The Raiders would also be fun, and Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham's defense, he'd be a perfect CB1 that they've been looking for a long time. And yeah, really any team that needs a CB1, just insert Jalen and he's going to be a steal.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fit for 32 NFL teams. Every single person could benefit from a Jaylon Johnson. And yeah, the Raiders are sneakily, a team that could throw a bag in him. Tom Telesco, it seems like a Tom Telesco type of signing to me, who I'm very familiar with, who was also doing his due diligence on Jaylon Johnson mid-season last year. And yeah, they have the cap space, $42 million. They could throw a bag at him. But yeah, all you couldn't go wrong. Jaylon Johnson fits into all 32 NFL teams. You're going to be looking.
Chargers would be scary.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. You put him in a Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, defense as their true, elite CB shutdown corner one. I mean, hell, sell Khalil Mack, sell Joey Bosa, sell Mike Williams, sign Jaylon Johnson. I would be thrilled. That would be awesome.
Yeah, like the Chargers are just another one of those teams where he could be like that one piece that just really transcends you and just completes that team. He's that type of player. So I think he's going to be very impactful no matter where he goes. Let's get on to our number 8 player, another secondary player. It's going to be Antoine Winfield Jr. for the Buccaneers, coming off of really 3 dominant seasons in a row. 2021, he graded out as a 90, which was the second highest safety in the NFL. Last year, he was a 78, which was the 10th highest, and then this year he also had a 91 grade, which was the second highest safety grade in the NFL. So he's just that guy. He's a dominant safety, can do it all, incredibly rangy, but he really thrives around that line of scrimmage, making plays, tackling. It seems like every week you watch the Bucks, he comes away with a pick or a forced fumble or something. He's just a crazy playmaker, the son of Antoine Winfield, legendary corner for the Vikings. And we had to put the Vikings as a fit because of that, and not just because of his dad though, because Brian Flores would love this kind of good player. I think he'd be the perfect Brian Flores safety, and that's a scary fit. We both don't have the Buccaneers on here just because we fully expect Mike Evans and Baker to be retained, and if you retain both of them, I don't know how much cap space they have, but surely you can't pay like 3 of the top free agents in this class, right? Like that's crazy. So we're almost positive Mike Evans and Baker return to the Bucks. So I think we're kind of playing around with the possibility that he does walk, but he's a fun player.
Oh man, he's an excited player. He's a polarizing player. He's a difference maker on defense. He's just one of those players that it's gonna make a feel, or it's gonna make a difference on the field. Whether it's forcing a fumble, whether it's intercepting the ball, whether it's we're scoring a touchdown. It's just he's the kind of guy that will change the outcourse of a game from the safety position. And yeah, the Buccaneers are looking at $43 million in cap space. Baker Mayfield's going to be 40 plus $1 million. Mike Evans, I feel like you're going to want to retain him, just a Bucks legend who's one of the most underrated players, underrated wide receivers of all time. I think you'll want to retain those two. It sucks because Antoine Winfield is a younger player than Mike Evans and just a difference on that defense. But I feel like I trust their evaluation to draft and a safety or go out and sign a cheaper veteran option. But yeah, I think Winfield will get a bag, and yeah, I mean the Vikings just feel like the perfect fit, man. He feels like a Viking, he really does, and not just because of his dad, just because of the whole scheme. The Brian Flores, they have the money, they have the allocation, the resources. You have Harrison Smith, who's now aging. This could be your next great safety. Harrison Smith is really more just a box safety. He's playing up towards the line of scrimmage. I think he rushed the passer like at an absurd rate last year. He was almost blitzing, and he's coming up to the line of scrimmage a lot. You put Antoine Winfield and let him be the rangy safety in the back would be awesome. And then another team, a young team, an ascending team, a Green Bay Packers, who aren't going to have a safety after this season. I think you would be very wise to let Darnell Savage walk and to go throw a bag at an Antoine Winfield. I think that would immediately upgrade your secondary tenfold. They could benefit from a guy like him. And then the Eagles, too. The Eagles' secondary is atrocious. They're obviously a team that's going to be a 10-plus win team. The NFC, it feels like he'll stay in the NFC for some reason. But to go to a team that any of these three teams could be a contender and could also throw the bag at him. So they're all three really, really fun fits.
Yeah, any team could use, in my opinion, like I might just say like the best safety in the NFL. I think just relative of like free safety, strong safety. I think he's just the best overall safety. He's really impactful. He's just incredible. And I do kind of want to pat myself on the back here a little bit because I kind of got some PTSD here with our last two players, Jaylon Johnson and Antoine Winfield, two players in the 2020 draft that I was raving for the Broncos to draft in the first round. Had a first round grade on both Jaylon Johnson and Antoine Winfield. Was pretty obvious through their film that you could see that they were going to end up being stars. I was honestly really confident that both of these players should have been like top end first round picks, and both of them were picks apart in the second round, 45 and 50. So just complete steals. Wanted to talk about that because I do remember identifying both of these players in the draft that were going to be future stars. Obviously, he has it all. Antoine's kind of the perfect safety prospect. So whoever gets him is going to get a dominant defensive player that can play in the slot, can play linebacker, play rangy free safety. He can do it all. He's going to be a star.
Yeah, preach, 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 preach. He's going to be fun, and yeah, I mean, it will be tough for the Bucks to try and retain him. It will be tough. So he will be a fun name to watch come free agency frenzy.
Yep, 100%. We have him at 17 million average per year. I think he's going to get like a 1 or 2 year deal. It won't be anything crazy. The safety position as a whole right now is definitely just being undervalued, whether we like it or not, even if it's the best safety in the league. But with that, let's go on to another secondary player, number 9 free agent, L'Jarius Sneed for the Chiefs, coming off of an incredible season. You could argue who was the better corner on the Chiefs out of him or McDuffie, but both were like top 10 corners in the NFL. I think you could argue Jaylon Johnson and L'Jarius Sneed, just relevant to like 2023, were the two best corners in 2023. So incredible that they're both free agents. It's going to be interesting to see where they end up. We have L'Jarius Sneed projected at 18 million per year. PFF has him at 17, but the Super Bowl champion thing usually kind of prices people up coming off of 2 Super Bowl wins, and he's really helped them on those runs, and he's really been dominant in the playoffs. He's had some games where he's just completely shut down number one receivers. So really high in L'Jarius Sneed, just a really good outside corner, really versatile, can move all around. We both have him being priced out of Kansas City, though. If we think they're going to bring back Chris Jones, I don't know how you could possibly bring back 2 top 10 free agents. So we do think L'Jarius Sneed leaves in the case that Jones stays. So what do you think happens with Sneed?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're gonna have to lose one of the two, big two. And I mean, they have Trent Duffy, who's just probably the third best corner in the NFL to all of a sudden. So I don't really think they skip a beat. It's just they'll let L'Jarius Sneed walk. They will get a pretty, probably a third, fourth round comp pick for L'Jarius Sneed and the contract he'll end up getting. So yeah, I mean, I think no doubt about it, they retain Chris Jones. L'Jarius Sneed, I feel like, is gone, which I'm not mad about. I'm not mad about being a Chargers fan. I'd love to see L'Jarius Sneed walk, and I think he will. It's just how do you off of winning the Super Bowl, how do you pay, 2 top 10 free agents? It's crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Chiefs would be the team to do it. By no means they would be the team that could definitely pull it off. But I don't think they will. I think they trust their front office and their ability to draft and develop players. And they do have some really good corners who are on the rise for them right now. But yeah, and let's just get into it. The Lions, a team, with a pretty atrocious secondary last year, they have $57 million to spend in free agency. They really need to address the corner position, and they really do need an alpha corner one. Plug and play L'Jarius Sneed there. This is another guy. The Lions are a couple pieces away from being legit Super Bowl contenders again this year. And L'Jarius Sneed's probably would be their biggest need and probably be their number one free agency target. So I would love to see him there. Obviously the Indianapolis Colts, who are Kenny Moore's coming up on a contract year. He's getting up there in age. You have plenty of money to go spend. Colts can go make a splash with L'Jarius Sneed. They need a true corner one. Kenny Moore was obviously more of an inside corner. You put L'Jarius Sneed on the outside. You can find a cheaper, veteran or via the draft slot corner. They're a lot easier to find, I feel like. But yeah, what do you make of it?
Yeah, he's going to be a valuable corner because Spagnuolo asks a lot from his corners. He can play on the outside, and he's been pretty dominant on the outside for 2 years in a row. So I think the Eagles, first of all, are a team that we might have forgot that I think the Eagles could just I could just see that happening. It seems like they're going to heavily pursue him, and he fits that defense perfectly. So Eagles are someone else I wanted to shout out. Lions, obviously, the same thinking as Chris Jones. They have all the hype in the world. They need help on that defense. Their secondary is ultimately their downfall. So Snead would be perfect to the Lions. The Colts, opposite of Juju Brents. They really need another number one corner. I think he could be that perfect guy for that Gus Bradley defense. And then I like you putting the Giants as well. I think Adoree Jackson's a free agent. I really like Deontay Banks last year, so you can pair those two together. And I think really just anyone that needs a CB1 though, you throw money at this guy because he's been really good 2 years in a row for a Super Bowl champion, and he's been really impactful. You saw that Ravens game where Zay Flowers was kind of taunting him, and then the very next play he goes and strips it and recovers the fumble on the same play. So he's definitely a playmaker. He's a beast, and he's just an outside corner, and he's been really good, which is hard to do. So I think the 18 million a year is definitely warranted as well.
Oh yeah, he's gonna get that bag. He was a big contributor, in beating the Ravens in that game and why the Chiefs ultimately went on to go win the Super Bowl. He was, one of the key pieces. And yeah, he's definitely earned himself a bag. Man, I really see the Lions getting this one. I'll be honest. I'm gonna call my shot on this. I really, really, really think Dan Campbell, balls to the wall. He's gonna go throw a blank paycheck at L'Jarius Sneed because that would really help his defense.
It would be nasty. But with that, let's go on to our number 10 free agent, Mike Evans, the Buccaneers legend. It's feels like I think he might have actually had 1,000 yards in every single season he's played in the NFL. Don't quote me though. I'm not too sure. I know he's had him like the last five.
Definitely the last decade. He did a decade plus of 1,000. It's been 10 straight seasons. I'll tell you exactly what it is, but it is the NFL record.
That's just absurdly ridiculous. But yeah, just coming off another incredible season, people thought he might take a step down, with Baker coming in, and Bucks didn't really have too high of expectations. He just really just went off, and he really boosted this team to the playoffs. They were a really good team because of how much you could rely on Mike this year. You could throw it up to him, and you could almost expect a Mike Evans touchdown every week, the way that him and Baker were playing. So we already kind of talked about it with Antoine Winfield. We think Winfield's going to be priced out of Tampa because we just expect them to retain Baker and Mike. I don't think you can retain Baker without bringing back his boy Mike. And then I don't know. It just seems like that's going to happen. It just seems like that's what the Bucks are going to do. So
Yeah. And I'll tell you real quick, 11 consecutive seasons of 1,000 receiving yards, tying Jerry Rice. So he can break it this year. He could break it this year, and it would be with the Buccaneers. I mean, I feel like it needs to be. Yeah, it would be so suiting. It would be so perfect. Run it back with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Mike Evans, his game is really hasn't. He didn't drop off. He has not dropped off until proven otherwise. I don't. He's had 11 consecutive 1,000-yard season. His game is kind of timeless. He's a big physical receiver. He's a sneakily good route runner. He's got incredible hands. I think he could be one of those guys that plays into his late 30s because he's that type of receiver. And yeah, do it with the Buccaneers, man. He is a Buccaneers legend. He is their greatest receiver of all time for this team. Keep him around, run it back with Baker Mayfield. Just you can't. I feel like you got to retain these two. You got to run it back. But if they somehow don't and they choose Antoine Winfield Jr., or they prioritize in a different route, you got to look at the Chiefs and the Bills, two teams with desperate needs of wide receiver help. Mike Evans, he would be looking to win a Super Bowl. If he's going to leave Tampa Bay, he's going to go to a contender, no doubt about it. And who's the first team you think about? The Kansas City Chiefs. They could make this work. They desperately need a wide receiver. Paired Mike Evans with Patrick Mahomes, he might be going for 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. It's just inevitable to happen at this point. But yeah, I mean, that's the first and foremost team I look at. And then I look at a team like the Bills, who I think might be moving off of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis this year. I think it's probably the smart thing to do. The Bills are in a pretty shabby cap space. They could save a lot of money if they cut Stephon Diggs and cut Gabe Davis. And I don't really feel like Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs have earned their contracts. I feel like their play is descending. And you go get Josh Allen, a guy like Mike Evans, where he can just throw up those 50-50 balls. He can really just launch it down the field. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I think the obvious fit if the Buccaneers somehow fumble him away, it's just any contender. You kind of seen leaks with the Chiefs for a little bit now, and I mean, if they get him in there, it's over. You can kind of say that with anyone of the Chiefs, but it's really, really over. The whole league should be ended if that happens. And same thing with the Bills, even the Lions. Like imagine him on the Lions with Amon-Ra, just really any contender that could acquire him, he'd be perfect for. Even the Chargers with Justin Herbert, you could do a lot of things with Mike Evans, and he's going to be a sought after guy if the Buccaneers somehow let him walk, but I don't really think we project that. We project Mike to get a $22 million per year deal. PFF has 23. I think we did that $1 million off because he's going to stay in Tampa. How long do you think his deal will be? Do you think it'll be a 1 year deal, 2 year deal, 3 year?
I honestly think I think it's a 3 year deal with an out in the third year. So I think it's really a 2 year deal with a with with how how they structure it, a 3 year deal, but it's really a 2 year deal where you can cut him the third year and save a bunch of cap space. That's how I ultimately think his contract will be set up, and I think it's fair. You can pay him 22 million dollars a year. He's definitely worth it, and I don't feel like his game is regressing. So that's kind of what I see is a 3 year deal, but really a 2 year deal with an out in the third year.
Yeah, I like what you said. I feel like you can just expect him to break that record next year. He's going to get 1,000 yards next year, bearing injury. Just because his play really is timeless. Like you don't see him physically really dropping off just because he was never the fastest guy. He never won with speed or acceleration, or he never won in the intermediate game or with his route running. He still plays the same, and he's physically, damn near the same. So he's going to have another great season with Baker. I think we both predict him to come back and have another great 1,000 yard season. Anything else you want to say on Mike?
No, should we talk about a little bit of honorable mentions who did not make the list?
Yeah, you talk about our like 11 through 17. We have like seven honorable mentions that we have right outside of the list. There's like 100 free agents that are good. So we could talk about them all. But the first one I want to talk about is just Michael Pittman because I was kind of going back and forth. I didn't know if I wanted to put Pittman or Evans higher. It's hard because I'd probably rather have Pittman on my team. He's a lot younger, but Evans is also more impactful right now, and he's going to make more money than Pittman. So I like us having Evans a little bit higher than him. But
Yeah, 100%. And just to throw out a couple, teams, obviously, I think Michael Pittman will get the franchise tag from the Colts, but a team like the Panthers, who desperately, desperately, desperately need a wide receiver one, could definitely throw a bag of Michael Pittman. And obviously, the Patriots do. The Patriots who don't have, I mean, these are two teams, Panthers and the Patriots, that do not have wide receivers, desperately need playmakers on those teams and have plenty of cap space to do so. So we'll be looking for any free agent wide receivers, the Panthers and the Patriots, to really make a splash with and to really be aggressive.
And then talk about the running backs. There's Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry. That's pretty immaculate to even say that are all probably going to lead.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I think you can really pencil in all three of these running backs leaving. It's hard to put free agent running backs in the top 10 just because the position is being so devalued and people are looking to get younger and drafting, their starters in the sixth and seventh round and undrafted guys. But Saquon Barkley, I'll throw out a couple fun team fits for him. The Chargers, pair him with Jim Harbaugh, put him in that, that really the Chargers need a run identity. Greg Roman needs a run identity. Justin Herbert needs help. You pair him with the Chargers, that would be a really, really fun fit. And also, obviously, I have the Giants. I think they would be dumb to let him go, but I think he will go. And then a team like the Packers, I think the Packers could greatly benefit. I feel like they've been, wanting that AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones 1-2 punch to really work out. Really hasn't. You put Aaron Jones and Saquon Barkley. That's a lethal duo.
Yeah, and I mean, like with Derrick Henry, thinking about Derrick Henry fits. Imagine the Ravens with Derrick Henry, or like imagine him staying in division and just saying "F you" to the Titans and going to the Texans, and one of these running backs going to the Texans because Saquon, Jacobs, or Henry, if they went to the Texans, it might be over. So yeah, it's going to be fun to just see where these guys end up. Josh Jacobs, same Chargers, Ravens, and these
Yeah.
running back DD teams, they're going to get a huge boost.
Oh yeah, and I mean, my top three fits or I'll just say top two for Derrick Henry. Yeah, the Ravens and the Cowboys. I feel like if you went into those two systems, I mean, gosh, that ground and pound, that those mean teams with good offensive linemen, that would be just ultra fun. And yeah, Josh Jacobs, Texans, Chargers, Vikings, pencil him in for any of those teams. He would make a substantial impact. The Vikings really do need a running back. Alexander Madison is not for real. I think they learned that last year. But yeah, fun running backs who should be on new teams. Big fantasy implications with that too that are going to be really fun to talk about come fantasy season.
And you know, with the Eagles, with Swift being a free agent, I think the Eagles will be buyers on one of those running backs as well. I really do think they're going to want one of those high name guys or those big name guys. So, going to be interested to see where they all end up. And then Daniil Hunter, coming off another incredibly productive season. It's interesting because he's right up there with Josh Allen and Brian Burns. Like we could have, ranked him in our top five if it was just based off of right now. But he is getting up there in age. Let's see, Dylan Hunter.
Patrick Queen. It would be a fun fit for a lot of teams. Sorry, I'll just throw that name out there. Patrick Queen, Xavier McKinney, Patrick Queen. I feel like he's going to go out and get a bag. So I was looking at Commanders, Raiders, Steelers as good fits, and then Xavier McKinney, Giants, Packers, 49ers. There's just so much to talk about. It's going to be so fun to really dive into this once free agency frenzy hits. But I mean, we will be doing quarterback carousels. We will be doing some more stuff before it hits. But it's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be wild the next few weeks.
Yeah, super fun talking about all these friends. But before we get out of here, I need your extra hot take, and it's going to be on a specific player. Where is Calvin Ridley going to go? Where is he going to end up once the Jaguars let him walk? Panthers? Since
Panthers. This is a strictly Panthers hot take. Yes, let's lock him into the Panthers. They could desperately need him. That makes a lot of sense. They desperately need help, and I think he'd pair great with Bryce Young. I love that. So yeah. Panthers hot takes only. That's where we need to stick to the theme. Dan, happy 99th episode. We're hitting 100 next podcast. We got to do something special. Stay tuned for a giveaway or something for our 100th podcast. This is fun. This is awesome. I can't believe we're hitting 100 for our next episode.
it's absurd. We're running up on 100 and we're coming up on a year almost doing this. So yeah, it's crazy to think about. We'll have a party or something for our 100th episode. We'll do a giveaway here. But yeah, thanks for tuning into the NFL Seekers podcast this offseason. A lot of draft, free agency, just offseason content. We'll have a lot of fantasy content coming out here soon. So yeah, really fun. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.